The Israel-Palestine conflict, a century-long dispute, is not just about land, it's about history, identity, and survival. It's a saga that begins in the late 19th and early 20th centuries with the birth of Zionism, a political movement advocating for the establishment of a Jewish homeland. Driven by a desire to escape centuries of persecution and drawn by religious ties to the Holy Land, Jews from across Europe began migrating to Palestine, then a region of the Ottoman Empire. But the Zionist vision clashed with the aspirations of the local Arab population, who had their own dreams of self-determination. The situation was further complicated by the intervention of foreign powers. In 1917, Britain issued the Balfour Declaration, expressing support for the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. This was seen as a betrayal by the Arabs, who believed they had been promised independence in return for their support against the Ottoman Empire during World War I. The aftermath of World War II brought a new urgency to the Zionist cause. The horrors of the Holocaust led to increased international sympathy for Jewish refugees, culminating in the United Nations decision to partition Palestine in 1947. This plan divided the land into separate Jewish and Arab states, with Jerusalem under international control. However, the Arab nations rejected this proposal, leading to the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. In May 1948, in the midst of this war, the State of Israel was proclaimed. This was seen as a moment of triumph for the Jewish people, a fulfillment of the Zionist dream. But for the Palestinians, it was a catastrophe, or Nakba, leading to a mass exodus of Palestinians from their homes. With the establishment of Israel, the stage was set for decades of conflict, negotiations, and human tragedy. Following the creation of Israel, the region became a volatile tinderbox, leading to a series of wars and uprisings. The first of these conflicts was the Six-Day War in 1967. Israel, surrounded by hostile Arab nations, launched a preemptive strike against Egypt, Jordan, and Syria. The war ended in a swift and decisive victory for Israel, which resulted in the country expanding its territory to include the West Bank, Gaza Strip, Golan Heights, and Sinai Peninsula. This victory, however, ignited further tension and resentment among its neighbours. Just 6 years later, on Yom Kippur, the holiest day in the Jewish calendar, Egypt and Syria launched a surprise attack on Israel, triggering the Yom Kippur War of 1973. Despite initial losses, Israel managed to push back the invading forces, but the war had lasting effects. It led to a shift in the global perception of the conflict and highlighted the need for a peaceful resolution. The failure to find such a resolution resulted in 2 Intifadas, or uprisings, by Palestinians against Israeli occupation. The first, starting in 1987, was characterized by civil disobedience, strikes, and largely non-lethal confrontations. The second Intifada, which began in 2000, was far more violent, with suicide bombings and military operations causing a high number of casualties on both sides. These wars and uprisings were not just about land and borders. They were deeply rooted in questions of identity, statehood, and the right to self-determination. They were about homes lost and futures uncertain. They were about generations of Israelis and Palestinians born into conflict, their lives defined by a struggle that seems without end. These wars and uprisings not only changed the map of the region, but also deepened the animosity and mistrust between Israelis and Palestinians. Despite the violence and bloodshed, there have been numerous attempts to bring peace to this troubled region. In the shadow of conflict, courageous leaders have emerged, reaching across the divide in pursuit of a shared future. One such attempt was the historic Camp David Accords of the late 1970s. US President Jimmy Carter brokered a peace treaty between Egypt and Israel, marking the first time an Arab nation recognized Israel's right to exist. Despite the groundbreaking achievement, the treaty did not address the core issue of Palestinian self-determination, leaving a significant portion of the conflict unresolved. Fast forward to the 1990s, and we find the Oslo Accords, another momentous effort. For the first time, the Israeli government and the Palestine Liberation Organization officially recognized each other. The Accords outlined a plan for gradual Palestinian self-governance, but the road to peace was marked by roadblocks, including ongoing settlement construction and acts of violence. In the early 21st century, the roadmap for peace proposed by the Quartet, the United States, Russia, the European Union, and the United Nations, aimed to end the conflict and establish a Palestinian state. Despite initial optimism, the plan was thwarted by mutual distrust, violations of the agreed terms, and changes in leadership. Today, as we navigate the 21st century, we grapple with the reality of continued tension and periodic escalations. The international community watches, at times in horror, at times with hope, as the drama unfolds. Actors like Human Rights Watch accuse Israel of apartheid crimes against Palestinians, while others, like actor Mark Ruffalo, apologize for inflammatory comments that may fuel hostility. Although these peace attempts have not yet achieved their ultimate goal, they have shaped the course of the conflict and continue to influence present-day realities. Today, the Israel-Palestine conflict remains one of the most complex and controversial issues in international politics. The discourse is rife with claims of apartheid against Israel, with organizations like Human Rights Watch accusing Israel of pursuing policies that amount to crimes against humanity. Israel, on the other hand, vehemently denies these accusations, labeling them as preposterous and false. The status of Jerusalem continues to be a point of contention, with Palestinians seeking East Jerusalem for their future state. Yet the 2018 nation-state law in Israel declares that only Jews have the right of self-determination in the country, further fueling the dispute. The two-state solution, once seen as the most viable path to peace, is now facing increasing skepticism. With the ongoing expansion of Israeli settlements and restrictions on Palestinian movement, the viability of a future Palestinian state is called into question. Despite these controversies, the pursuit of peace remains paramount. The conflict has seen a surge in the use of inflammatory language and a rise in verbal and violent attacks, underlining the urgency of respectful dialogue and engagement. While the path to peace is fraught with challenges, the hope remains that a just and lasting solution can be found, ensuring the rights, security, and dignity of both Israelis and Palestinians.